Hey, everybody. What is up? Good morning. If you, or when you arrive, I should say hello in the chat. Looks like we're going to have some really good numbers today, which is fantastic. Always a, hey. Let me close that before it starts yelling in our ears. Okay. We got Claudio here. Philip is here. Vania. Paul is here. Steve is here. Kevin, I think you're missing a marketing opportunity. Geary baseball hats and Geary range of merch. A lot of people have talked about merch before. I'm not a, we could do the merch thing. It's just, it's on the bottom of my list. Andy is here. Ted is here. Andrew, Jaroslav, welcome. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces. This is fantastic. Ruben is here, of course. Good to have you, Ruben. Good to see you again. Shout out to everybody who joined me yesterday on WDD Live. Shout out to everybody who joined me the day before on our Inner Circle monthly office hours. This is day 3 of live streams for me. So this is going good. And, today I just wanted to thank my lawn care company. Because, they have the entire day. Hey, I mean, you could come at 9 a.m., you come at 10 a.m., you could come at, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3. You could come any day, any time of the day today, right? Now, what time do they arrive? 3 minutes ago. 3 minutes ago. So if you hear them cutting the grass outside, that was not planned for this live stream. Andre is here. Welcome, Justin. Netrunner, Derek is here, Lyle is here. Okay, we've got hit some likes, throw up some likes on the stream. We got a couple announcements. We're going to tell you what we're doing here, and then we're going to get right into it. This is a casual exploration of version 2.6. This is not an official, tutorial video or anything like that. Here's what I have planned. Going forwards, I think the best path is a live stream to just hang out with everybody and chit chat and explore the new features of the new version and kind of show people, hey, here's how it works. Here's how to use it, yada, 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 answer some questions. Okay. Then there will be a series of official videos on how to use each specific new feature. Those videos, of course, will go into the documentation center. If you're not aware, there is a public documentation center coming. There's actually a whole brand new website for automatic CSS coming. And then a big part of that new website is full redone. We're redoing all of the documentation right now. We are on a mission to have the best framework, which I think we're accomplishing. We're also on a mission to have the best documentation, which we will accomplish. And we also are on a mission to have the best education, which I think we've accomplished. So, if we can continue to hit those goals and check those boxes, I think everybody's going to be very happy. And those are the things that we're continuing to pursue. So this is a casual exploration of version 2.6. You can ask questions about the new features. What I would say is let's not ask questions about ACSS in general, because this is not a replacement for the monthly Q&A. We do a monthly Q&A on how to use ACSS, right? So let's keep this stream focused on questions about the new features. If it's how to use a new feature or how does that new feature work or whatever, that's perfectly fine. But if it's general ACSS questions, save that for the monthly Q&A that we do. And here's my update on the monthly Q&A. We're doubling down on the monthly Q&A because the last one I did, I kind of felt like it got dominated a little bit by more intermediate and advanced users. And sometimes that can make the beginners feel a little left out, or like their question doesn't matter, or their question's dumb because look at all these upper level questions that are getting asked. They may just not want to ask at that point, right? So I'm gonna split it up. We're gonna do a monthly Q&A for intermediate and advanced users, and we're gonna do a monthly Q&A purely for beginner level questions. And so I think that'll make everybody happy as well. All right. And then yes, there is the new ACSS website coming soon. We are not going to sneak peek it, but it will. It's not very far off. Okay, we're buttoning up the last few touches on that. Okay, so with that said, why don't we go ahead and get into it? This was a major, a fairly major update. What kind of numbers we got here? Oh, we got over 160. This is fantastic. Let me go ahead and screen share, make sure that we've got that all working. Okay, so I'm just going to we'll just go through the change log together and take a look at some things. Official support for generate press and generate blocks. I'm not going to go into like the entire generate workflow. It's a very involved thing. It would take up like the vast majority of this live stream. So if you're a generate press and generate blocks user, I do have generate blocks installed on here. I don't have generate press installed on here because I have bricks installed. But I would encourage you, and there are many already doing that, going in and using all of the new generate press stuff. I do want to show you just a couple of the things involving Gutenberg. Okay, so because this is a very substantial update for Gutenberg in general as well. So I'm going to hop over here and we'll create a new page. And we'll just title this Gutenberg. We will publish. Okay, so the first thing that needs to be pointed out, and I will add a generate container just because, native Gutenberg doesn't really have any real useful blocks. I'm going to open the structure panel here. So here's a container from generate. And the first thing that you're going to notice is the classes box at the top. What we have done is brought a class first workflow, more or less, to Gutenberg. And I think this is probably the most important update for Gutenberg users, because as we know, if a builder, Gutenberg in this case, hides the classes box, then it really is that's horrible for workflow. So anybody using utility classes, anybody using custom classes constantly has to, first you have to scroll down to the end of this panel over here. Then you have to open the advanced tab. Then you have to start typing in the additional CSS classes tab. And if you have to do that every time you click on an element, scroll, open, click, scroll, open, click, scroll, it destroys workflow efficiency. And so we made a very simple adjustment, which is let's take that classes box and let's move it to the top. And I just want to pause, make sure everybody are we screen sharing? Is everything all good? Are we good to go? The one adjustment I can make for everybody, because I know somebody, we know Derek's is here. It is T-minus 8 seconds before Derek says something about the screen resolution. So Derek, I'm just going to go ahead. And adjust this real quick for you. Let's see. Let's go to display settings. Let's make sure we're using the correct display. Extended. I don't even know which one. Oh dear. Don't do that. Main display. Let's go back. Okay. So does this, yeah, I guess, no, that's the wrong one. Okay, Mac Studio, this one. There we go. All right, which one are we sharing? Now I have two builders open. Okay, there we go. Well, now we're reading inner circle posts. Okay. Oh gosh, no, don't open Final Cut. All right, here we go. Primary display. Okay, nope. Okay, hang on. Primary display, secondary display. There we go. That's where we want to be. See what happens when someone's like, hey, can you make the screen resolution change? Now we're in menus and other applications and all this other stuff. Okay. So CSS classes box, now everybody should be able to see it much, much easier. CSS classes box, top right side. But this is not all, my friends. This is not all. Another very important change is you now have the right-click context menus within Gutenberg. And you can now adjust the height of this panel. So some of y'all like it really long, right? So you can see a lot of stuff all at the same time. Some of you like it nice and tidy. You can also move this box, by the way. So obviously I don't want it covering my CSS classes box. So I can just kind of reposition it where I would like it to go. I mean, if you wanted to, live and hang out on the other side, it can hang out on the other side. Eventually I want this to be dockable, but I think, docking this is, it's a little bit more complex. So for right now, it's just a floater. It just floats around a little bit, but it will remember where you put it. So that's good as well. So like if I close it, right, and then I reopen it again, it's still going to be there. And then, so obviously now you have with this, you have the entire cheat sheet, more or less. You have the entire cheat sheet for automatic CSS. So you don't need to know what the utility classes are, right? If you just are like, I need a background. Okay, well, you just start typing backgrounds and then it's instantly going to give you all of your background options. And then as you hover, you're going to get the live preview in the canvas now. So for those of you who are, from Bricks and Oxygen, you know how great this has been in Bricks and Oxygen. This is now happening in Gutenberg as well. So everything, kind of the entire workflow that you have in Bricks and Oxygen is now available to you in Gutenberg, which is absolutely fantastic. The only real limitation here, and this is a Gutenberg limitation, and the only tool I know of that really solves this limitation well is Quickly within the Gutenberg environment, is that, you could put a custom class up here, right? But you'll never be able to edit the properties of that class. It's just, you're just putting that class on a thing. These controls down here don't apply to this class that you're putting up because that's not how Generate is built. That's not how it works. It's not a class first system. So you can, if you're going to use custom classes in Generate, you basically do what I do. So you're going to say custom class, and then you hop over to a child theme CSS file or WP code box or the front end customizer, and you can start styling. You basically write your own CSS for the custom classes. You don't do this, by the way, in the Generate presets area because presets will not apply classes. You cannot use utility classes or custom classes in Generate presets. They're mostly useless for that. You also, by the way, cannot change HTML tags in the presets. You guys hear my lawn company right outside? So yeah, you can't. Presets to me are I wouldn't even use them. If I was using Generate, I would not use the presets feature. I would avoid that at all costs. And it needs to be improved dramatically, in my opinion. But this is, as far as Gutenberg improvements, remember, this is not just Generate. Okay, you're going to get this, you're going to get this, you're going to get all of this, even if you're not using Generate, just in general, the general Gutenberg environment. Now, for those of you who are jumping in and just like playing around and throwing stuff on the screen, and then you're like, why isn't it working? This only works in Pages. It does not work in Post by default. And I want to talk a little bit about the complexities of trying to make all of this, the Gutenberg environment in general, okay? It can work in Post. We have a function that you'll add to your functions.php file, and it will add support for all of this, what you're seeing here, basically inheriting your styles into Gutenberg. That will work in Post if you add the functions.php snippet. That's an option, okay? The reason it's off by default is because if you're building pages, you're page building, then it makes sense to inherit all of your styles and have the canvas look exactly the way the front end does and all of that. But if you're writing a blog post, I mean, your blog post, it's like in a container usually, or in a template. You're not building the entire page. You're just writing a blog post. And for me, where I ran into this in all of my testing is when I went with a dark themed website. So I had everything was dark. And so the canvas in Gutenberg was dark. But my blog post theme, my template for it had a white background for the blog post. Even though the rest of the theme was dark, I made a white container for my blog post. Then I went to edit the blog post in Gutenberg and I was typing on dark when really the display of a blog post on the front end via the template is on a white background. And so it wasn't matching my environment. And that is where I really discovered the complexity of doing this, because in Bricks, you're looking at a literal visual representation of the front end of the website. And so if you're editing in a template or whatnot, you're seeing exactly like the environment that you're editing in. In Gutenberg, we don't know, where this is being put. I mean, you could put Gutenberg content anywhere. You could put it in one singular block, you could put it in a blog post thing, or you could build an entire page with it. And there's no telling. We don't know what the user is using it for. So what we're going to have to do is come up with some sort of almost like style presets for Gutenberg, where you can select over here, almost like this page attributes area. This is what I'm brainstorming initially, where you can say, pull in all my styles, or just pull in text styles, background styles, whatever. I don't know. We got to figure that out. But right now, there's no context for where Gutenberg content is being used by the user. So we don't know whether it's supposed to look like your website or not look like your website. That's a big challenge. There's a lot of challenges there. So, but again, this is stuff that we'll be working through and figuring out as we go. None of this stuff is without challenges. Okay, that's all I really want to say about Gutenberg. You do also have, obviously, all of your variable expansion is going to work in these input fields if you're a generate user. Your calc expansions are going to work in these input fields. The new pixel to rem converter is going to work in these input fields, which I'll show you guys in just a second. So like I said, what we want is like the same experience. If you go from bricks and then you swap over to doing generate for something, you should have the same classes, the same workflow, the same, all the features still available to you. It's a nice, seamless transition. And that makes your life easier. You don't have to have a completely different workflow for this other environment. And then obviously with our multi-builder support, if you're like a bricks user for a while, and then for some reason you're like, you know what, I want to switch to quickly or whatever. You switch to quickly, you don't need an add-on, you don't need an upsell, you don't need to go buy another part of automatic CSS. You literally just go install automatic CSS on that website, you open quickly, and everything as you know it, your entire workflow that you know and love with automatic CSS is just now in Quickly. You have the same context menus, the same variable expansion, calc expansion, all that. Now that's coming to Quickly. It's not here yet, but that's the goal, is you can switch seamlessly between all of these supported tools and your workflow is unaffected. Your workflow is just as efficient as it was before. Okay, so let's get out of this. And let's go into bricks. So let's take a look at this change log. So pixel to rem auto conversion. Very important feature. I'm gonna just explain it quickly. I'm gonna go back into the dashboard here. All right, so let's go into typography and look at this root font size area right here. Automatic CSS. Hey, what's up, Kraka? Good to have you. Root font size in automatic CSS is set to 62.5% by default. There is only one reason for that. One reason and one reason alone. It is to make it easy for users to calculate rem units relative to pixel values. So if you're looking at a Figma file and the Figma file says we need that font size to be 80 pixels, like your H1 needs to be 80 pixels. Well, you could divide 80 by 16. Not everybody can do that on the fly, so that requires getting out a calculator. And then every time you have to get out a calculator to do this, it's just a workflow killer, right? It's just annoying. It's really annoying. If you could do 80 divided by 10, pretty much everybody can do that. So, that's much better for workflow. Well, the way that you make that happen is to set your root font size to 62.5. Now, one rem is equal to 10 pixels versus one rem equal to 16 pixels at 100%. So that saves on the math. It makes your workflow easier. It makes less thinking and things like that, okay? The downside, there is one legitimate downside. Now, people will tell you there's all sorts of downsides. They're wrong. There's one objectively like real downside. Let's say that WS Form or Fluent Forms or some other third-party plugin uses rem units. As soon as you install that plugin, those values are going to be much smaller than they otherwise would be. They would be smaller, and that would not look good. And that is a downside. It's very rare because most third-party plugins don't do that. But if they did, and if they start doing that in the future, that could present a problem. Now, you could always override it. You could always fix it. It's not like it's an unfixable problem, but it would be a problem. Okay, so if you have it at 100%, your root font size, that problem will never happen. Root font size 100% is like, that's the de facto standard, right? So if you do 62.5, you are taking a more rare path, I should say. And 99.9% of the time, it's not going to cause any issues whatsoever. 100%, you will not run into any issues, okay? The problem with 100% is you got to do that stupid divide by 16 math all the time. And if you're like me and you don't really like math all that much, it's annoying. Okay, so what we've done is we've addressed that. Now you can set this to 100% and you don't have to do math. So it's like the best of both worlds. So what does this actually look like? So I'm going to go in and we are going to set the width. We're just going to change the width of this box right here, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is just add some padding to it. So I'm just going to do like pad M here, and then I'll do BG action, something like that, just so that we can see it. And I'll go on to the front end and we will take a look. Okay. So, and it's going to look different in the builder now because I adjusted the screen resolution. We're looking at a zoomed in version here. And then this is the kind of the real version where I have more room on the sides. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I am going to say that we want the width of this container to be about 640 pixels, or really actually 640 pixels. But maybe we don't want to use pixels, right? We could put 640 in here and it will change it to 640 pixels. But let's say we want to use rem instead, and we don't want to do that divide by 16 calculation. Well, you can just write CTR. CTR is not an actual unit. It is now in automatic CSS that tells automatic CSS, convert to rem, convert this value to rem. So 640 CTR will immediately go to 40 rem. And this will do any decimal, like anything that needs to be calculated, it will do this, okay? It will also do this inside of a calc function. All right, so let's say you wanted 640. Let's do 640 or 650, it doesn't really matter, plus 5 VW, something like that. And then we hit enter. And so you see, you get the calc expansion. So it wrote the calc function for me. It also did the conversion to rem. And then this will also work with a variable. So if you wanted to take a variable and add 60 pixels to it or something, it'll expand the variable and do the rem calculation for you and write the calc function for you. It'll do all of that at the exact same time. So as far as workflow with using rems, this is, I think, about as good as it can get, all right? Again, you don't have to do math. Everything is going to work out for you. Now, I go down into CSS land down here because here's the thing about switching to 100%. If you're going to convince me to switch to 100%, I'm going to tell you I better not have to do math anywhere. Like, not having to do math in the input fields is fantastic, but I write a lot of custom CSS. So if you tell me that I have to come down here and start doing, if I have to get out a calculator to write custom CSS now, that's still kind of a deal breaker for me. So that is why we made sure that this also is going to work here. So we can do 640 CTR. And now the difference is you're not going to hit enter here, right? Enter is not, that would not help us, right? It's going to do the calculation when you add the semicolon onto the end. That's when the calculation is going to occur. Now, you might be thinking, well, Kevin, that's great, but what if I do let's do 640 CTR plus 5 VW. Now, like, what, do I come over here and put in the semicolon? Or like where? No, you just still put in the semicolon at the end. It's still going to do the calc expansion. It's still going to do the rem conversion. All of that is going to happen for you seamlessly. So you don't have to do that in the CSS box here. And now I know what people are going to say, but Kevin, I write my CSS in CodeBox, right? So surely I still have to get out a calculator at some point. And well, that's me too, right? I write CSS over in WP CodeBox as well. So what we'll do is we'll put a, let's say custom block. I don't know. It doesn't really matter what we call this thing. We're just going to target it with a class. So custom block. I'm going to come over here and we're going to hop into WP CodeBox. Okay. And we're going to target our custom block. And now what we're going to do, we haven't like hooked into WP CodeBox to like mess with all of their stuff. What we've just done is we've given a function, okay? Or really it's a mixin, all right? So we're going to say width, and then we're going to do, actually it is a function. So is not a mixin, sorry, it's a function. So CTR, and then I just put my 640 inside of it, okay? So width CTR 640, and there you go on the front end. And if we go ahead and inspect this, we're gonna see custom block, the width is 40 rem, and that is coming from CodeBox. So yet again, you still don't have to do any math. And then if you were gonna do a math function, like a calc function or something like that, this thing can live inside of a calc function. It can be added to a variable. It works exactly the same as just putting a real unit there. You can do this everywhere now. That was the goal, is like, I don't wanna have to do math anywhere. If I'm gonna switch to 100%, I don't wanna have to do math anywhere. Now you don't have to do math anywhere. So that is a pretty meaningful set of updates right there. So that is pixel to rem auto conversion and the new Sass function CTR, and then your pixel value goes inside of that function for converting pixels to rem. Okay. Now we have a new class and variable for referencing your website's content width. So this is another insanely useful for workflow here. I'll leave custom block there for right now, but we're gonna remove the style. Okay. So let's hop over here and let's talk about this section right here. Now, we all know that this section has a gutter, right? It has inline padding that prevents any content inside of the section from touching the edges of the screen. That's very, very important. This also establishes your website, what's called your website's content width. That is the width, because your content's not going to get any bigger than that, regardless of how big the screen is. It could be an 80-inch screen. Your content is still going to be this wide, right? Whatever this is set to. And this is probably 1366. There you go. Okay. So there are times, and actually, let me back up. We also probably all know, you could do breakout full or something like this. So if I put the breakout full class on here, then I am going to get this to go full width. And that is always a possibility, and it is still a possibility. But I will say there are situations where you probably don't want to use a breakout class. We don't need to cover those situations right now. What we're doing is just showing you alternatives to things. One of my goals with automatic CSS is that you're never in a situation where there isn't a good solution. Not just a good solution, but like the optimal solution is kind of like at your fingertips, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I am going to, and I really, this is the one thing I hate about having my screen resolution like this. Let me refresh. Okay. I'm going to remove the inline padding. So we're going to just zero this out. So what I've done is I've removed the gutter for this section right here. And we're going to go and we're going to take a look at this. Now on the desktop, nothing has changed. Why has nothing changed? Because that is a container and it is still just max width 1366. It's not ever going to stretch to the edges of the side because that's not what containers do. But what you'll notice is that on mobile devices, the gutter is in fact gone. That is going to touch the edges of the screen. And that is not desirable in most cases, right? Okay, so just leave that for a second. Now, what this allows me to do is it allows me to put something else in this section that I do want to touch the edge of the screen, like perhaps an image, okay? So I'm gonna throw an image in here and we're gonna go with full width on this image and we're gonna hit save. Now, this is gonna be an absolutely gigantic image, all right? But notice that the image is spanning the full width, and I still have something here that is my content width. But the problem that I've created by doing this is that while my image touches the edges of the screen, which I wanted, on mobile devices, so too will my content that is in this section. And I can put a lot of content in this section. And again, you could break out the image, but just stick with me that let's pretend we're in a situation where I don't want to break anything out. And there's plenty of situations that I can highlight in the future. I can give specific situations that I've run into. What I really need is a way to tell this content right here, yeah, be content width, but please also don't touch the edges of the screen. Please also have a gutter, right? I still want the gutter, even though I removed the gutter. And a lot of you would think, well, you got to work. There's got to be another way around that. You're doing it the wrong way or whatever. No, just hang out. Just chill. Because there are many, many, many times where you want this to happen. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in content width. And we actually have a new content width class, but we have two of them. There's two versions of it. There's just content width, which will give you your normal container width, your normal website content width. And then we have content width safe. Okay, and why is it called safe? Because it's safe from touching the edges of the screen, okay? And so on desktop, I'm refreshing. I've just refreshed like 5 times. You do not notice a difference. It is legitimately your website's content width. But what you are going to notice is that somehow it has a gutter. And that gutter matches the gutter of your website. So if you have other content, right, it's still going to align perfectly with that. So if you had a section down here with a real gutter in it, those two things would perfectly align because they both calculate to the exact same value. And what this does is it uses a min function. It does not use any sort of padding technique or anything like that because padding would effectively change your website's content width, and that's not content width. So we can't do that. So we use a min function that says, hey, it's gonna allow it to be 1366, so your website's content width on desktop. But the minute it goes below 1366, it's gonna behave as if it has a gutter. It has like a virtualized gutter. There's not a real gutter there. It just pretends as if there's a gutter there. And this is very, very, very helpful in a lot of different situations. So now you can have a section with no gutter, but still have content that's guttered. That's very powerful. If you're wondering, does this have a corresponding variable to go with it? Then the answer is yes. So I can come down here and I would want to do content width safe. There's no double dashes in the variables except on the beginning where the variable is. And you're going to get the exact same effect here. Okay, so that is with a variable instead of a utility class. And then if you want to take a look at the new content width, we can do that as well. I'm going to put a block in here. A block, of course, will extend all the way. So let's do BG base. We'll just put a color on there and then pad M so that it has some dimension to it. Okay, we'll go in. Look at that block right there. Why does the block go all the way across? Because it's 100% width and because the section has no gutter. But I can say, no, you're going to be content width instead. And we're going to go on the front end. And it's going to be content width. Now, it's not going to be content width safe, right? So when I go down here, it's going to touch the edges of the screen. So if I want it to have the gutter, I use content width safe. If I don't care about the gutter, I just use content width. Or if the section already has a gutter, content width. Okay. Why not use content width safe everywhere? You could. You definitely could use, well, no, I'm sorry. Let me back up. We could switch, we could take away, we could have, I've debated this internally in the past. And so what the situation would be is, let's not put physical gutters in sections by default. Sections could have no gutter at all. And our containers could use the content width safe technique. And so your website would still have a gutter, but it wouldn't use physical padding for your gutters. That is a possibility, okay? But you would not want to do, I won't go into the details there, okay? It's a little bit technical of a discussion. It's going to be too much of a rabbit hole for this situation. What I will say is that if you do have physical gutters, you have to be careful with content width safe. So I'm going to get rid of this, and we're going to put in a section. Now the physical gutter is back because I have a default section that has a physical gutter inside of it, right? So now what I'm going to do is BG base. So you do have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing here, okay? Let's do pad M, and I'm going to say content width safe. All right, save, and then we're going to go take a look at this on the front end, okay? And then we're going to come in. This is not the appropriate gutter. This is 2 gutters. That's a doubling of the gutter because this thing is trying to use its min function to manufacture a gutter, and there's a physical gutter that is already present in the section. So what you have by using content width safe inside of a section that has a gutter is you get 2 gutters. You don't want 2 gutters, right? Content width safe is for when there is no physical gutter. So maybe you're not even putting something into a section. Watch this. You can take, we don't even use a section. Let's just say you're putting a block on the page. Oh, I hit that on accident. Let's do block. There's a block right here. All right, section, go away. There's my block right there. So I'm going to do BG. So it's not even a section. It doesn't even have a chance of having a gutter. Why won't it let me select it? That would be good. Come on, bricks. Get with the program, bricks. All right, pad im. All right, we need some dimension. So let's just go check on this on the front end. So there's your 100% width block right there. It's not in a section. There's no chance of this having a gutter, but I can still say, well, number one, I want this to be my content width, and I would like it to have a gutter. So I'm going to say content width safe, and then we're going to save. And if I refresh on the front end, it is going to be content width, and it is going to have a gutter. So like I said in the beginning, there's no situation that you're going to find yourself in where there isn't an optimal solution, right? We know that it's very common that you want content to match your website's content width. And then there are also situations where you need that to happen where there's no physical gutter to protect the content from touching the edges of the screen, and you need to manufacture one. And it shouldn't take multiple utility classes to accomplish this or anything like that. It's just, we know content width is important. Here's a content width variable and class. We know having a gutter is important. So here's a second one as an option. Content width safe class, content width safe variable. Okay, so that is quite important, and it's a lifesaver when you are in a situation where you decide you need it, and you're like, oh, well, I wish I had that. Well, now you have that. All right, let's take a look at, we might skip some of these and come back to them. We might continue to do some low-hanging fruit stuff and then come back to maybe some of the more technical things. Like I'm going to skip overlay mixin. This would be more for advanced users. It's, clickable parent mixin is something you're going to use, I think, all the time. If you do a lot of BIM work, if you do a lot of custom classes, you're going to use clickable parent probably way more than you use overlay. And then focus parent coincides with clickable parent. And this is actually for those clickable parent people out here, okay? If you're a clickable parent type person, which you should be, everybody should be, then this is a game changer for you. You're going to absolutely love this. Now, I want to skip ahead real quick before we do clickable parent. I'm going to go into automatic CSS dashboard because there's one little prerequisite feature that I want to show you that's going to make the clickable parent thing make even more sense, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into additional styling. We're going to take a look at this accessibility area right here. Now, if you know from the past, ACSS used outlines for focus. So when you keyboard navigate, that outline that shows up around an item, that uses the actual outline property. And the thing about outline, there is one big downside to outline, which I was hoping for the longest time. I was like, I really hope, there's actually a couple downsides. I was like, I hope they're just going to fix this at some point, and then we don't really have to worry about it anymore. But alas, they still haven't fixed it. The CSS people, the CSS gods have not fixed this yet. Outline does not actually follow the outline of elements. So for example, if you have a rounded button, the outline around that rounded button is going to be square. And that's kind of annoying. It's like, it's only for keyboard users, but it's still kind of ugly, right? It's kind of ugly. So what a lot of people do is they use a box shadow for focus style, because a box shadow will follow the contours of an element. Well, now in automatic CSS, you have a choice. You can say, no, I want to switch to using shadows instead because I like shadows. The other problem with outlines is that if you notice, like maybe in an accordion where there's no gaps between the accordion items, when you keyboard navigate those, part of the outline is going to be hidden, right, below the next accordion down, and it looks like a broken outline. Shadow doesn't really, have this problem as much. So, shadow does definitely have some benefits. So now you can switch over to shadow, and you can still choose the width of your shadow, which is good. Now that you know that, we can go talk about clickable parent because this leverages that a little bit. All right, so, and I'm going to take my time because clickable parent I'm going to do a dedicated video on clickable parent, but clickable parent is one of the most commonly asked questions and commonly misunderstood techniques, and people just can't figure out how to make it happen on their own, even with the utility class sometimes. So we're going to do it the utility class way, and then we're going to do it the custom CSS way. And pay attention to this part. This is like very, very important. If you're not using the clickable parent technique, your cards and a lot of the clickable elements that you add to a website are probably not as accessible as they should be. All right, so we're going to let's go into home here. Let's close these tabs out. Let's make sure we don't get lost in tabs today and open windows. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a grid of 3 on here. And, you know, one thing I really, really like about these contextual menus is like, especially for grids. So I've already made a 3-column grid just by clicking that button right there. But then I can also say, all right, I want it to be 2 on L and I want it to be 1 on M. And so I've already done all of my responsiveness. Okay. All right, let's go to add a block here. This is going to be our card. So man, if you're not using the contextual menus for just grids alone, like just go bam, 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 like right down the line, it is really fantastic for that. Okay, let's not build too complex of a card here. We're just going to build like a nice basic card. I like to do a media wrapper here. So we'll just say that this is our card. I love to have a media wrapper. And I love to have a body wrapper because this gives the maximum flexibility for any type of card structure that you want, regardless of whether you want some padding in the body or no padding in the media. Like this gives you this just general card structure. This gives you a ton of flexibility here. So when you're creating a card, I would just recommend don't just start piling elements into your card, right? Take some time, put a couple wrappers in here, and you'll have more flexibility. So then what I will do is I'll put an image in here. And I'm going to try not to race through this because I don't want to lose people who are trying to keep up here. All right, so we're going to put our image in, and then we're going to put some elements into our body. So we're going to put a heading, and we're going to put text. And this is just kind of all we're going to do for right now. All right, so this is going to say card heading, and then our text is fine. All right, now, what is the next step? Before I do anything else, what is the next step? Somebody tell me. Because I feel like a lot of people still don't get this, like still don't understand this. Like before I can start styling anything that you see here, like I've added all of the general structure. What do I have to do before I can start styling anything about this card? Somebody drop it in the chat. Drop it in the chat. I'll read some chats. Here we go. Love the clickable parent mixin. Now I don't need to create my own. So it means I don't need the clickable parent class. Exciting. Correct. For custom elements for sure. Okay. CH is a CSS unit, which would cause issues with C. All right. I think you guys are talking to each other. Yes. So Flipback says BIM. Yes. You have to add your BIM classes here. Okay. Do I have a card class? Doesn't look like I do. Okay. So we'll just use this generic card class. So then this would be card and then double underscore. Just, you know, you can copy this to your clipboard. And then this is going to be a media wrapper. And then this would be the media. All right, you take like 5 seconds. And by the way, I will say this. If you guys want a sneak peek, okay, this whole workflow that I'm doing right here will be completely unnecessary, probably in ACSS 2.7. Okay, I can't make any promises, but I'm thinking 2.7. This will all be unnecessary. You will be able to one-click BIM. And we've got some really cool stuff planned for that. All right. So now that I've put a class on everything, I can start styling. And basically what I want to do is I want to give this card a background color. And then we're going to talk about why clickable parent is so important. So let's just use some different colors that we normally don't use. So we'll just put secondary light in there. And then I can go to my layout and I can go to my spacing. Let's do like... we don't want to do M in the entire card. This is where the flexibility comes in. I will demonstrate this. So if I wanted medium padding around the entire card, I can achieve that kind of look very easily, right? But I actually only want padding in the body, right? That's why I have a body wrapper. So now I can come in and just put the M spacing in there, and then I can apply it to all sides. Then I can come in and I can also gap this. And so I can do content gap. That expands my variable. If I don't like my content gap right here, I think it's too much. Like maybe I like that content gap for other content, but in cards, it's a little too much. All right, you can do content gap divided by 2. So you can just really dial this in with some very simple calcs. And that's why that automatic calc and variable expansion is so handy. All right, let's go take a look at this on the front end. Okay, so here is our card, and we want this card to be clickable. So what I will say is if you come up here to card, and you try to add a link to this or something, you turn the HTML tag into a link. This is inadvisable. Inadvisable. This is not the accessible way to create a card, a clickable card. So we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to turn the most important text in this card, which is the card heading. Imagine if this was a service, right? Like, what would an eagle catching? I don't know. Save. Okay. I was going to say like, lawn mowing because my guy was just mowing the lawn, but I was like, why is there an eagle there? So eagle catching is nice. So you can see that by default is like the most relevant thing for this card, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the link. All right. So we're going to come in and we're going to say link to external URL. I don't know where it's going to go. We're just going to say Google. Perfect. Okay. Save. Go to the front end. Refresh. There we go. So you see that is the link. We can go to eagle catching. Even if I, keyboard navigate this, it's going here. But what the problem here is, this did not accomplish my goal. My goal, I said, was to make the entire card clickable. And this is just a clickable link. So what we can do now is 2 steps. And this is, I think, where everybody gets lost. 2 steps. First step, take your parent, the card, style, go to layout, go to position, go to relative. We have to be able to catch the clickable area. What we're about to do is take this clickable area and like throw it as a blanket onto this entire card. But if we don't catch it, we don't show where the boundaries of that blanket are, it's actually going to make our whole page clickable. Like it's going to take over the whole screen. We don't want that to happen. Changing this to position relative on this parent right here catches the boundaries of the blanket so that the blanket doesn't go beyond the boundaries of this card. The second step that I can do is I can come into my heading. This is also my link. Remember, this is where I put my link. I'm going nice and slow so we don't lose anybody. And I can use a class called Clickable Parent. You've always been able to do this, okay? Save. Go to the front end. Okay, the entire card, you see the hand? The entire card is clickable. This is good. This is what I wanted. There is still a problem, by the way, though. When I do keyboard navigation, and it's still going to only highlight eagle catching. It's still only going to actually focus on the link. That's not a technical problem. It's still fine. From a technical accessibility standpoint, that's still fine. It's still fine. But from a visual standpoint, it's not the best, right? Because the whole thing is clickable. We kind of want the whole thing to focus as well, okay? So if we go to the change log right here, you're going to see that there's something new, and it's called Focus Parent, okay? And what this does, well, I'll tell you how it works in just a minute. But what we're going to do to apply it is we're going to go to the actual parent, and then I'm going to show you how to do this with custom CSS in just a second. All right, I'm going to type Focus Parent on here. And then we're going to save, and we're going to go back to the front end. Let me see if I did this right. Card, focus, parent. Okay, save. All right, hang on. Focus, parent. It is on the card. That is correct. Hold on, am I using the correct? Now, one thing that we did, we made a couple edits to this. So I want to make sure. Include focus parent. Ah, that's it. Yes. See, got to learn your own utility classes sometimes. So what we did is we made 2 options for it, okay? And so it used to be focus parent, but now it's actually you determine the style. Because remember, and that's actually why I showed you the prerequisite of outline versus shadow. You actually have that option granularly anytime you use clickable parent. So what we want is focus parent, double dash, and then you get to decide, okay? Do you want it to be the shadow version of this, or do you want it to be the outline version of this? And remember, this is separate from your default. Your website default is not going to matter here. You get to choose on the fly which one you want. So if we do focus parent shadow, we should get a shadow outline, okay? So what we're going to do, there you go. So there's my keyboard focus. So 2 things have happened. 2 things. 1, the entire card gets the focus style. But number 2, the heading no longer has the focus style. See, it's gone from the heading text, and it's only applied to the actual parent. So for that visual effect of I've selected my card with the focus, that is all done for you. Now, you can also, like I said, on the fly, focus parent, outline, you can just change that. The default for this website is shadow. That is the default for this website. But if I change it with the class, I now get the outline with the offset. And if we're talking pros and cons, outline versus focus, this would be another difference, okay? You're not gonna get that offset with the shadow focus style. So if you love having an offset on your focuses, then you're gonna wanna use the outline. But if you don't care about that, you actually, maybe it's more important to you that the focus style actually conforms to the shape of what you're focusing on, then you would want to use the box shadow styles. It's just a pros and cons thing. It's not there's no right or wrong outline versus shadow. It's literally just pros and cons. And you can change it on the fly with these as well. Okay, so that is focus parent combined with clickable parent. We now have an entire card that's clickable, and we have an entire card that's focusable, which you could not do before. Now we're going to make two adjustments here to show the custom CSS side of this. I'm going to take off clickable parent, and I'm going to take off focus parent outline. And I'm going to hit save, and we're going to refresh. We're just going to confirm that we are back to what we wanted. So this is no focus. This is nothing is clickable except for the actual link itself. We're back to square one. We want to try to do this with custom CSS now, targeting our card class and our card heading. All right, so I'm going to hop back, and we're going to go into WP Codebox. So this is a highly requested thing. People are like, I don't want to have to, I made custom components, basically, like my custom elements. I don't want to have to use a utility class to achieve clickable parent. I want to be able to do this with all the other custom CSS that I wrote for this element in WP Codebox. All right, so we have card. That's what we're targeting now. And we have card heading, which in SAS, we'll just do this for everybody. Let me zoom in a little bit. In SAS, you have nesting, right? So you can just easily nest this. And so you could say ampersand, right? And actually it would be double underscore heading. All right, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna write this as card double underscore heading. And we could just test this out real quick. Let's just do color, red, important, something like that. Just make sure that we are, see, styling that exact element, okay? That's called doing a color check or a border check when I do it with borders a lot of times. It's very simple, a little technique to make sure you're targeting the thing that you actually want to be targeting before you try something, that you actually want to do. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to say add include clickable parent, okay? That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. Should be all you have to do. All right, so we're going to check this out. Entire card is clickable. Got it? Now, you still need to make the card position relative, which you could do. You could easily do up here. So if you're writing your own custom CSS, this is where you would do it. Position relative. So now my card is position relative. My card heading has clickable parent on it. For those of you who don't know SAS, like don't worry about all this nesting stuff. You can do this with vanilla CSS. You still have to do this in a SAS style sheet because these includes will not work in vanilla CSS. But you could absolutely come down here and just say, I don't know all that fancy shit. I'm just going to write card heading. You can absolutely do that, okay? SAS is great because it keeps your one component, it keeps all the styles for that one thing contained, like self-contained, which is really, really, really nice. You could even come down here and start doing your media queries inside of this. Like it's very good. Okay, so now the question is, what about the focus style, right? Because I did achieve clickable parent, and you saw how easy that was with that mix-in, but my focus style is still in the wrong place, right? So what we want to do, check your change log here, focus parent, include focus parent, and then the style goes inside, right? Okay, so we're going to say @include focus parent, and this is one that I just changed recently. It was initially just focus by itself. And here's where you're going to say, I want the outline or I want the shadow version. And now you see I get exactly what I wanted. Zero utility class reliance now. So you have clickable parent with no utility class, and you have focus parent with no utility class, completely done with BIM on the back end. You are free from utility classes now if you want to do clickable parent and if you want to change your cards or your elements focus style. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about like, why don't you just make the entire card a link? I've done 3 videos. The problem is I talked about this within the context of other videos, right? I don't have a dedicated video on clickable parent and why you don't make an entire card a link. So I will do a dedicated video on this is why you don't make your entire card a link And this is how the clickable parent technique works. And this is how you change the focus styles, yada, yada, yada. We'll do a whole dedicated video on that. All right, let's hop back over to the change log and let's take a look at the next thing. So button mixin, we don't really need to look at this. If you are creating a custom button in Sass, I can just show you an example. We don't even need to like look at it really on the front end, but just say you were doing custom button. You want effectively maybe like a gradient background or something like that, but there are parts of the other buttons that you want to hook into. Like all of your ACSS global button styling, the padding, you want it to be the same. The border styles, you want it to be the same. Like the minimum width, everything, the font size, everything about the buttons, I want to be the same as my default buttons. I just want to customize one aspect of it. So what you can do now, what you had to do in the future is you had to do like padding, and then you would have to use variables. So like button, it was like button pad Y, button pad X, and then you have to do the next thing, minimum width. And then it's literally like 12 instructions that you have to do for all of the default styles. Now what you can do is just say @include button. And you have a choice here. If this is going to be a custom solid button, you can say bring in all the styles that apply to solid. If it's going to be an outline button, you can say this is going to be an outline button. And effectively what this does is it writes those 12 lines of custom styles for you, and it allows you to just come under here and say something like background, linear, gradient, and then you can just go off to do whatever you want from here forward. This basically pulls in all the global defaults, then you can put all your customizations right below it, and you can effectively create a custom button without any hassle whatsoever. So that is a really good mix-in for those of you who like custom button type stuff. Let's keep going. Delay children animation mix-in. We'll come back to this. And this is another advanced technique, probably something that, you know, especially if you're not doing animations on your website, you would never use this. So we'll skip that for right now. Automatic contextual spacing. Critical, okay? Let me go back to WP Codebox. This is going to be another just tremendous workflow enhancement. I'm going to head over to spacing in the dashboard and scroll down to contextual spacing, and you're going to see that there are now 3 toggles. These 3 inputs always existed or have existed for a while. They control your container gap, they control your content gap, and they control your grid gap. But now you have an option, and you can say, and I want to talk about this because I know there's going to be questions about it. Okay, so we can just answer these questions. I already know what they're going to be. We're going to turn these, we'll leave them off for right now. Okay, save, because I want to show you what the workflow has been in the past. So we are going to refresh our builder. Okay, and we can get rid of our card now. We've done enough with the card. So I'm going to add a section, and you see that there's a container in this section, right? I'm going to duplicate this container a few times, and I want you to see that that container is touching every other container. All containers, they are not socially distancing, okay? They don't care. They are not socially distancing. We would ideally, I mean, in most cases, like them to socially distance, because if I put some content in this one and I put some content in this one, like maybe I throw an image in here, well, shortcut's going too fast. Image, there you go. Put this in right here, save, okay. And then down here, I'm trying to like, here's my call to action or something, like my button. I mean, this is no good, right? Like, we don't want everything touching each other. So what we would come in and do is we'd select our section and just easy, you know, this is already easy. It's already easy. You just say, hey, container gap. And that's going to gap out all of your containers. Okay. Now you could also say, I mean, it's up to you here what you want to do. You could say, well, just content gap this because it's really just all content in here. So you have really 2 options, right? And then inside of your little containers here, you're putting your stuff. You got other stuff in here. All right, but that's all touching. It's like, what is going on here? So you come over here and you say, I just want my content gap, please. Okay, save. And now your content is gapped out. And you're using these contextual utilities all throughout your site. And what's going to happen is all of your content's going to have insanely consistent spacing. There's no thought that has to be put into it. You're just like, I just need content gap here. I need container gap here. I need a grid gap here. So it's still a dramatic improvement over most people's workflows. But the question was always, can't we just make that even better? Can we just like make that even faster and just with even less thought? And yeah, so you actually can. So I'll just take out all of this content gap, and we'll take out the content gap here. We'll get back to where all of our stuff is touching. And then I'm just going to go turn on automatic container spacing, automatic content spacing, automatic grid spacing. We'll go ahead and hit save here. And then we will close that down. We'll refresh our builder. And everything's just spaced out for me. It's just all automatic. It's just nice, right? If we go back to a blank slate here, don't worry, I already know what the questions are going to be. We'll talk about them. So here's my default section. I'm just going to start duplicating this, and suddenly now, all of my things want to socially distance automatically. If I put a heading in here and I put text in here, it's going to automatically social distance according to my content gap. Remember that this content gap is completely customizable, right? This just happens to be what the value is on this install, and I can change it anytime I want. It's changeable right here, in fact, okay? So it's not like this is set in stone. And we have made sure that this automatic spacing has zero specificity. This is going to answer everybody's questions right now. This automatic spacing has zero specificity, which means at any point in time with a utility class, with a custom class, with ID styling, it doesn't matter. Any point in time, I can come in and say like gap XS, and I can just change the gap. Like just on the fly, I can just, I just want something different here. We'll just choose something different there then, because the automatic spacing has no specificity. It's easily overridable using pretty much any technique. So you're always in full control, command of what is going on with your spacing. If I did a grid here, okay, so let's go back. I'll show you again with the right-click context menu. Say, hey, I want a grid, and we go bam, S. Okay, just made my responsive grid. 3 clicks inside of the contextual menu, I've gotten my responsive grid. Now I'm going to go add my block here, and you'll notice they are socially distancing. According to what? According to your grid gap, because this is a grid. Right? So it automatically knows where the content is, and it applies the appropriate gap spacing to it. But if for some reason I was like, no, I actually want like, let's do gap of XXL. I just want a huge gap up in this grid. Well, now you can have a huge gap up in this grid. Again, the automatic spacing is never boxing you in. It's just giving you that automatic starting point, because most of the time you're not going to need to change it. Most of the time you're just going to fly through building the page, and the automatic spacing is going to take care of everything for you. That's the ideal. The only place it doesn't work, because we felt that this would probably be too heavy-handed, a little too heavy-handed, is to do it inside of blocks and divs and things like that. So here you're still going to want to use your utility classes and such. Now we may bring this, because we want to be a little safe with it. Okay, we're going to start with section containers. We're going to start with inside those containers, we're comfortable spacing things out. Inside grids, we're comfortable auto-spacing things. Next step could easily be inside blocks and all of this. Now, some people are going to say, Kevin, you can go up here, and you can go to pages. You can go, where is it? Theme styles. You can come down here. You can go to container, wherever that is. And you can set like the gap here. You can set like a default. And the problem with this is, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that. It's going to render all the utility classes for automatic CSS. You can't override this area. This is not with the ACSS utility classes, because we defer to the builder. And right now you're saying, no, the builder is making this decision. Okay. So that means ACSS is going to step out of the picture. Like not, the builder already made the decision. Okay. So we're not going to override that. And so there's a downside to this. Okay. Whereas with automatic CSS, it's automatic spacing. There is no downside because there's no specificity to the spacing values. Okay. So I just wanted to explain that real quick. All right, let's see. Nicholas says, auto spacing, I'm with it. Just determine your spacing size as set and forget. Yep. Where was all of this when I was building my website? Hey, it's here now. Okay, better late than never, right? I'm getting undefined mixin clickable parent in WP Codebox. Any troubleshooting suggestions? Really good question. I probably should have mentioned that. So those mixins, guys, are not going to work unless you've imported the proper sections of automatic CSS. This is in the documentation, by the way. You need to import the functions. You need to import the mixins. You have to be using WP Codebox 2, not number 1, number 2, because that is the one that has the proper infrastructure for hooking in to automatic CSS. But if you've imported the correct things, then you can start using the mixins and functions. If you haven't done these import statements up here, then those are not going to work, because WP Codebox doesn't integrate. It doesn't hook into automatic CSS by default. You basically have to tell it what parts of automatic CSS you want to hook into. And again, this is all in the functions and mixins documentation. But that was a good question. Okay. Philip says, so can I reference my button primary? I think you're talking about the button mixin. You don't reference any particular button because the reason you're using a mixin is because you're wanting to change the style of it. So you wouldn't want to reference button primary because that would reference primary styles, like the primary color and so on and so on. You could just use button primary. You don't need a mixin for that. The mixin only references the things that are alike between all the buttons, not the things that are different between all of the buttons. Okay, let's go back to our change log here. Text and heading balancing. Guys, this is getting fun. This is fun. Again, I mean, this is going to be, now there's some things that we got to talk about here, okay? But this is just going to be very, very, very fantastic stuff. By the way, in Bricks 1.8.4, is anybody else noticing this? It's having the same, when you style a class or the builder's having trouble updating the preview. And sometimes it requires a little bit of a refresh. And that is a bug they fixed, but to me, it's come back a little bit. It's creeped back in. Okay, let's add a heading here. Let's add text here, and let's go ahead and gap this out. So content gap. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write just enough text to have an orphan. There we go. Okay, look at that, like magic. Okay, so this is an orphan. This is a single word that just, it couldn't fit. It couldn't fit with the others on this second line, so it was forced to its own lonely little line down there. And if you don't know anything about like basic UI design, this is just a bad thing. Like UI designers, good UI design, you know, they get a little sick to their stomach when they see the orphans. You know, nothing against the children or anything, but it's just not an ideal situation to have a little orphan hanging out down here. And then this could happen here in the text as well. So if I write long enough, we will probably have an orphan at some point. Is it right here? Yes, there you go. Okay, so there's your orphan. You've got two orphans that we need to deal with. All right, so what we're gonna do, there's two ways, and again, this is about maximum flexibility, not boxing you in, okay? Two different ways to go about this. Number one, we're gonna go into automatic CSS. We're gonna go into typography. We're gonna scroll to this area of headings, and then there's another one in text. And it's a little toggle that says automatically balance headings. There's another one that says automatically balance text. I'm gonna go ahead and toggle those on, and we're gonna go ahead and hit save changes. And then I'm gonna go back and we can refresh. Let's get rid of this tab and let's refresh. And you see we no longer, this still has an orphan. Okay, this is actually a really good, we need to talk about why this still has an orphan. Notice the heading is fixed. Now, notice that in this particular case, the heading actually got like, I would say it's a little too small. There's two techniques that CSS has come out with. One of them is available, one of them is not available. Text wrap balance is available, and that's what we're currently using to get rid of orphans. Text wrap pretty is coming. Now, what text wrap balance does is it literally tries to balance the heading. So it tries to put the same amount of text on every line. That's a little heavy-handed. It's a little heavy-handed. All I wanted was to get rid of the orphan, right? Text wrap pretty will just get rid of orphans. It's not as heavy-handed as text wrap balance. Problem is, text wrap pretty is non-existent in browser support. There's zero browser support for it. I don't even think it comes up in can I use, okay? When text wrap pretty is supported, we will switch from text wrap balance to text wrap pretty because that's ultimately what we want. Text wrap balance to me is too heavy-handed. Text wrap balance also has a limitation of 4 lines of text. If you have more than 4 lines of text, text wrap balance will stop attempting to do its job, okay? So I don't think text wrap pretty is going to have that limitation. Why didn't this balance? Because it's a div. Automatic CSS only looks for paragraph elements to do this on, and it only looks for only child paragraphs. So if you have a long paragraph, which is obviously going to be more than 4 lines, or multi-paragraphs, automatic CSS isn't even going to try. It's only going to do situations like this. So if I change this to a paragraph, you see what happened when I change it to a paragraph? It balanced itself. Okay, so this is auto heading and text balancing. Let me look at this on the front end real quick. Now see, at this like remember, we're zoomed in here because of my screen resolution, but on the front end, that actually looks perfect. It looks exactly the way that you would want, okay? So this is good. Now, I don't even know if it balanced there because I don't even know if it created orphans here, but it looks just fine. So it hasn't ruined anything, right? It still looks good. Situations where there might be an orphan, let's take a look at how, like there. Because the grid didn't have enough space anymore, so it's going to start to collapse that, and so it doesn't allow an orphan right there. And then it doesn't allow an orphan again when there almost was one there. So it is doing its job of protecting us from having an orphan. This is auto balancing. It's going to do this to every heading and every little paragraph, okay? There may be a situation though, because in your mind, you're like, oh, if I turn this on and it does something I don't like in a specific situation, what do I do then? It's okay. We already thought about that. So now you can just come in and grab this heading and just say unbalance. So it's just a very simple utility class. We'll just unbalance that one paragraph. You want to do it right here too? No problem. Unbalance, okay? But then you're like, Kevin, I don't know. That was like you selected two different things and that felt a little chumpy. Okay, we'll just select the parent then, and you can do unbalance on the parent and it'll just unbalance everything inside the container. Okay, so you have a lot of ways to undo this if you feel like, oh, it's working in most situations, but like that one situation right there didn't work all that well. Go ahead and unbalance it. No harm, no foul, okay? That is option number one. Option number two is you don't turn off or you don't turn on auto balancing. So I'm going to save here. I'm going to go back to the front end, okay? We see, reload. We're going to have orphans in our builder. There's an orphan, there's an orphan. And you're like, you know what? Let me look at this one. See, this is the downside of having the screen resolution zoomed in, okay? All right, Derek, this is the downside right here. I'm not seeing in the builder what is actually happening on the front end. Okay, so let's add more. Now we have to save, and we gotta go to the front, and well, we still haven't gotten let's add one more. Gotta really work for some of these orphans here. There we go. Okay, we finally got an orphan. Remember, automatic balancing is turned off. So I can come in and more options at your fingertips. You can do this on the heading. You can do this on the text. You can do this on the parent. Doesn't matter. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say balance. And we're going to save. And we're going to go to the front end. And now it balances. So you can have this automatic is turned off. And I just balance things as I come across them that I might want to balance. That is your second option. You can do that too. All right. Let's see. Any questions about balancing before we move on? This is really, if you're annoyed by orphans, then this is a very, very, very important thing for you. For all of us. I too am annoyed by the orphans. Okay. Not for real, people. Calm down. Calm down. All right. Manual text and heading balancing is that. Text and heading unbalancing. We talked about that. We have preliminary support for container queries. I've already showed this in a previous video, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. We have ultra dark transvariance back again. So if I wanted to do the ultra dark trans 20 kind of thing, if I go in here, notice that all of these colors under ultra dark, you have all of your transparencies available once again. We had deprecated that a couple versions back, and it's too useful. It's too useful, so we put it back. That was a deprecation mistake on my end, okay? My fault. I was like, and the reason I did it is because we have light trans and we had ultra dark trans. And then people were always constantly trying to do dark trans because it's the opposite of light trans. And we didn't have dark trans. So I was like, well, let's just switch ultra dark to dark. But it messes with the shades too much. So when you do the transparencies, you really wish you still had some ultra dark trans. Now you have them. So you have both now. So you still have dark, but you now have ultra dark and you have light. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Back to the change log. Okay. Did that. Smart spacing for lists and list items. Ah, gosh, more fun, more just insane efficiency here. Okay. Because this is a lot of this stuff, guys, was we did a vote back before my birthday. I was like, my birthday's coming up. My gift to ACSS community is I want to get as much of your feedback as possible. Like, what are the things that bug you about ACSS? What can we fix? What can we make better? And we got a lot of comments, a lot of votes, a lot of stuff, a lot of ideas. Now, some people's ideas were like insanely lofty. It was like, guys, I'm talking about like that I can put into the July update, like the August update. This is stuff you like, okay, maybe 2024, all right? But whatever we could put in, we put in. This is one of them. And this, by the way, was annoying me as a user as well. So let's talk about it. Okay, so let's do like a blog post situation. You've got like your rich text. Let's just pretend that we don't have to pretend. Do I have any posts in here? I do have some posts. Okay. So let's go to, let's talk about this. This is good. This is good to talk about because it's once again, very common question. Very common question. So we're going to go over to Bricks templates and we're going to do a blog post template. Okay, so blog, and I'm going to assign this to single posts and we're going to publish. And then we're going to go edit with Bricks. And then, I don't know, because I'm lazy, we'll go over to blog here. And I don't know, we could do alpha, we could do char. Let's insert blog post Charlie. Okay, so down here, and I got to go up here and assign this, right? Conditions, post type, posts, there we go. Okay. Assign it to a post. It would probably also be helpful if I populated content from a post, single post page. I hate this drop down because it doesn't, look, it's only giving me pages, but as I just verified a minute ago, I have plenty of sample blog posts. See, I have to search for it to find it. Okay, apply preview. It's going to save it. It's going to redo our preview here. And it pulls it in. Hey, I mean, look at that. Look how easy it was to just, hey, I need a blog post template. Okay, well, you got one. Thanks to Frames, you now have one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go edit this blog post, and we're going to do some annoying things, like we're going to put in a list. Well, who would want one of those? Well, I do. All right, so this is going to be list item 1, list item 2, list item 3. And what I also want to do, so that we're not seeing the corrected version, let's go back here. Let's go to automatic CSS. Let's go to typography, okay? And come down to typography spacing. We're actually gonna, so there's this, we renamed this. This was here before. It's called intelligent spacing or something. Alliteration is always better. Simpler words are always better in marketing, I guess. So it's just called smart spacing now. We're gonna turn off smart spacing. All right, we're gonna save. And we are going to refresh here. Okay. So this is what your blog post will look like without automatic CSS. So if you just add a blog post template and you're not using automatic CSS, you're going to see that it's like, all right, paragraphs, fine, whatever. This heading running into this paragraph down here, not so fantastic. These list items having completely different spacing, like almost no spacing between them when paragraphs have spacing between, they're a little, squished. Not so great, not so great. So what we're going to do, and this doesn't just affect blog posts, by the way. Let me go over to, I think we can get out of this template now. Let's go over to pages. While this is off, probably a good thing to highlight here. Okay, let's go in here and let's go, let's make our little 3-column grid again. Okay, so let's go over here and grid it. Go 3. I don't need to worry about the responsiveness right now. Let's go block. All right, and then in here, we're gonna go with a heading. So pretend we're making a card, right? Text, hopefully I don't have this, I do. I have a fix somewhere else in this install for this nonsense. Normally what you would see here is because this is a paragraph now, it would try to space itself out from the heading automatically. It would have some default user agent spacing, and you wouldn't be able to use gap in here to create, normal gaps or like equal, even gaps. So that's what this smart spacing feature fixes here as well. So what I'm going to do is turn on smart spacing. We're going to hit save. And the first thing we'll do is look at, we don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. We don't need that anymore. Let's look at our blog post. So I refresh, and you see now that my headings are not colliding with my text anymore. You also see that this heading is spaced out differently from the normal paragraph spacing. Because for good rhythm in your spacing, typically you want your headings to be a little bit further away from that last paragraph than your other paragraphs were. And the real key here is I now have control over all of this. So when you turn on smart spacing, you have a heading spacing option, you have a paragraph spacing option, and what's new to 2.6 is you have a list spacing and a list item spacing. All right, so look at my list items now. They're a little bit more spaced out automatically. And by the way, you can't style these things from the template, okay? So if we go back in our template here, go to Bricks Templates, we're gonna go to Blog, Edit with Bricks. People ask this all the time because there's no controls for this in the builder. This is just a post content widget. There's no go to style. I mean, where's headings? Where's heading spacing on here? Where's paragraph spacing on here? Where's list spacing on here? There is no options. So if you don't have automatic CSS, you basically have to go write custom CSS to target all these things. But with automatic CSS, you just go turn on smart spacing. And now I will show you what it looks like to make some adjustments here. So we're going to go into automatic CSS, typography, scroll down. Here's your spacing for smart spacing. So just to exaggerate this, I'm going to do like 8M on my headings. So I'm going to hit save and we'll refresh. You see what's happening. So my headings have 8M of spacing. Now that's clearly, you would never want to do that, right? But it just goes to show you, wait, maybe I want 1.25. Maybe I want 1. Maybe I want 0.75. Let's see what that does. Save. So 0.75M, refresh, looks like that. And maybe you like that, right? You stick with it, whatever. It's up to you, 1.25M. Now let's look at what paragraph spacing does. Let's do the exaggeration just to see, get a little idea here of what's going on. This is what happens, okay? All right, and what this does, by the way, is this uses, if you're familiar with the lobotomized owl spacing technique, that's all this uses. This uses lobotomized owl. It looks for what are called adjacent siblings, and it spaces itself out from an adjacent sibling. Notice that the first paragraph of your blog post does not have any spacing above it, right? Why doesn't it? Because it doesn't need it. It doesn't have an adjacent sibling. It doesn't have anything above it, so we shouldn't put spacing there. That's what this technique does. That's why it's called smart spacing, because it only puts spacing where spacing is actually needed. Notice that it doesn't put any spacing on the end of the bottom of the last paragraph. Why? Because there's no adjacent sibling. It doesn't need spacing there, so it doesn't apply spacing there. Okay, so I'm going to put this back at 1M. And then what's new, you've always been able to do that, but what is new is list spacing. So let's see what list spacing does. We'll do the exaggerated 8M. And now look at this. The list container, the wrapper of the items is now being controlled. Okay, so this gives you control over the wrapper of your list. Okay, so I'm going to put that back to 1. And then list item spacing does as you would think now. It's actually going to cause the spacing to happen within the list items. Notice that it's still smart. It's not putting the spacing at the beginning of the list item or at the end of the last list item, because neither of those have adjacent siblings above or below them. The only thing that has spacing is the second one, and the third one has something above it, so it's going to apply the spacing in those two places. Okay, that's just an overview of why it's called smart spacing, because it doesn't just apply some dumb like margin top to everything or margin bottom to everything. It looks for adjacent siblings and it applies the spacing between those siblings. Okay, so that's really important, because you couldn't do that before. You would have to write custom CSS to achieve that before, and now you don't have to write custom CSS. And effectively, that's aside from block quotes, which we may add support for block quotes. Aside from block quotes and maybe images, there's really nothing else you have to worry about when you're doing a blog post, unless you're doing a lot of custom stuff. But if you're just doing a normal blog post, really nothing else you would have to worry about. So again, we don't want to be too heavy-handed, too fast. We may add support for images. We may add support. It's a little more complicated because it's like, is the image in a figure tag? Is it not in a figure tag? Is it, that kind of thing. And then block quotes is tough because people do a lot of fancy stuff with block quotes. We just have to make sure it doesn't interfere with any custom stuff you might want to do. Okay, let's go back to our change log here. Box shadow focus style option, we already talked about. Official Fluent Forms styling support. This is huge. A lot of Fluent Forms users out there who have been waiting and waiting and asking and waiting and asking, and it is finally here, my friends. So we will hop over here. This is a default Fluent Form contact form just sitting here on the page. If you know anything about form styling, it is a rabbit hole of nightmares and anxiety. Pharmaceuticals often come into play, you know? So it's a situation you don't really want to find yourself in if you have to write custom CSS to style forms. There's a gazillion form elements. All of these form plugins style things differently. It's really just, there's things that most people, if you're not familiar with HTML, haven't even heard of. I mean, there's legends, right? It's like, this is fucking Zelda. Like, what is going on around here? Okay, so what we want to do here is just style this form. And we have two styles in ACSS you can choose from. You have a light style and you have a dark style. So this is on a light background. So I'm going to choose my light form style. So I'm going to do form _ light, and I'm going to hit enter. And you're going to see that this automatically styles my form for me according to the styles that I have set in the dashboard. So now if I go over here, I'm just going to show you the area, and you're going to see, you know, it's a lot of things. And so what we've done, just to explain the philosophy here, form styling. So you've got control over your label styling, your legend, there it is, there's Zelda, your help styling, all right? You've got your field and field set styling, your input styling, anything imaginable is, you know, you could style it for the most part. Even if there's a progress bar in there, okay, what do you want the height to be? What do you want the border radius to be? What do you want the colors to be? To explain this is your default styles. This is shared styles across your form. So form light, form dark will have, you know, the same spacing, all of that good stuff. So, and that's why, like, if you look at progress bar, it's all you see is height and border radius. It's like, well, where's the color though? The color is in the light style or the dark style. So now same things, progress bar styling. Now here's where I can choose my background color, my fill color. This is for the light version of the form. If I come down here, I can choose what they're going to be for the dark version of the form. Okay, so it's literally just going through the, and yes, there's a lot because forms are complicated. They're really complicated, okay? What our philosophy was give people a really decent, like, this is a decent starting point. I have customized nothing. This is what your form will look like out of the box. It uses your base color for labels. It uses your default focus styling for your inputs. It uses your fonts. It uses, everything is just kind of done for you. It has your button styling by default, okay? And then all you have to do is go in and make granular changes. So it's not like you have to style this whole thing from scratch in ACSS. It's got sensible default styling that you then go in and customize. You have full control over that styling. Now, let me show you here if I want to switch this up. So we're going to go BG base ultra. We'll do BG black. How about that? We'll just make that black. Then I'm going to take my form style. I'm going to say, no, this is not a light form anymore. So we're going to remove that class and we're going to say this is a dark form now. And there you go. This is what I get as my, and this is, again, not customized. This is just a sensible default for what a dark form style might look like. It does a lot of the work for you, and then you just go in and you customize whatever needs to be customized, okay? This works in WS Form because WS Form was the first form system that we integrated with. So this has been in WS Form for months and months and months. It is now in Fluent Forms. And we are going to be refactoring how we do forms on the back end. And once the refactoring is done, any form plugin by default that allows you to remove styles. See, in Fluent, you don't have to remove the default styles. In WS, you don't have to remove the default styles. But after we do the refactoring, any form plugin that allows you to deactivate default styles, Automatic CSS will automatically be able to take over. We won't need like dedicated support for Pinocchio forms, whatever that fucking system is called. And then this form system over here and this other form system over here. It won't really matter that much anymore. The question will be, does your preferred form system allow you to remove default styling? And if the answer is yes, then ACSS can control it. That will be the reality after we refactor everything. Okay. Let's see here. I want to make sure we have time for questions and everything. Is there anything else super? Oh, yes. Oh, this is an easy one. Guys, you're making your changes, okay? You're throwing stuff around in the dashboard and you're like, I want to save my changes. Okay, see my mouse right here? See my mouse? It's just going to sit right there. It's not going to go near the Save Changes button, but I'm going to save my changes, okay? Command S now saves changes in the dashboard. You don't have to constantly click the Save Changes button. So it's kind of like if you're in the Bricks workflow, the Oxygen workflow, you're used to Command S-ing all the time to save stuff. You can now Command S your way all the way through the automatic CSS dashboard. So that's another little quality of life feature. Oh, here we go. Reduce motion option switch. This is another good one. Additional styling. No, options right here. Accessibility. Reduce motion. Let's just talk about this. It's quite comical. I poke fun at this cohort of users all of the time. So there will be people who are doing all these fancy animations on their website, and they're like, I can't see the animations when automatic CSS is turned on. If I deactivate automatic CSS, I see all of my animations. Automatic CSS is broken. You've broken all of my animations. No, my friends. No. Automatic CSS and animations play perfectly well together. I do animations and I see them just fine. And I'm obviously an automatic CSS user. And so then we have to explain to the person, well, on your computer, you've elected to not see animations. You are what's called prefers reduced motion. And so you're not seeing animations because you prefer not to. And automatic CSS respects the user's preferences for animations. That's an accessibility, that's important for accessibility. And to me, the question was always like, if you prefer reduced motion, why are you increasing motion on people's websites? Like, it never made sense to me. So I poke fun at them, right? But, okay, I digress. We can all be friends. Now you have a switch. So if you're like, I prefer reduced motion, but I also like motion, if you like to live in that contradictory reality, then you can just turn off that feature. And I would recommend you turn it back on because it is very important for accessibility. But if you want to see your animations while you're developing the website, then you can turn it off, okay? So this is your switch right here. So reduce motion, yes or no, that's up to you. I would reduce motion before you put the website live. And again, if you don't and this is an operating system setting, if you are on a computer where you have not elected to reduce motion, you will not see any problem with animations in automatic CSS. You will see animations as everybody else sees animations. You only will see no animation if you yourself have elected to not see animations on your particular computer. Okay, that's the explanation of that. What else we got here? Single row for website dimension. That's all that is this. Like, we put these in a single row. Okay, improve styling. Oh, that's an important one, actually. This is another user request from back in June. So if I go to typography, no, let's go to buttons. So buttons, right? So my button text styling. Font weight. It used to be 100 through 900. That was your only options. And unfortunately, this is actually better explained with links. So link 100 to 900. If I'm forced to set a value here, like 400, and then I have a bolded paragraph and I put a link in that bolded paragraph, the link, unfortunately, would be forced back to 400. It wouldn't be bold like the rest of your paragraph. So what you actually want to choose here for your link defaults, which is the new option, is just inherit. Wherever I use the link, inherit the styles that are in that container. So if I have a big bold paragraph of text and put a link in it, it's going to be bold because it's inheriting the boldness. If the paragraph is not bold, then it's going to, let's say it's 400, it's going to inherit 400. So for links, for sure, this is very, very, very important. But you can do it on buttons as well. You can do it on, where else was it like an option? There was a couple other drop downs where it was an option as well. I don't know off the top of my head right now, but basically everywhere where it made sense to make that an option, we made it an option. So you can now inherit styles, and that's going to prevent a lot of little headaches here and there. All right, general Gutenberg enhancements. Yeah, we talked about those. This is right here. If you click on general Gutenberg enhancements, this is the function for adding support to posts and custom post types if you want to have styles show up in posts and post types, okay? Just grab that, add it to functions.php. You're off to the races. We did a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, and you can read the rest of the change log. It's not anything major. We've covered all the major things. Let's go ahead and jump into question time. I want to make sure, and again, this is not necessarily general ACSS questions, but questions about new features would be good. And I'm going to go through and see what people are saying. James Round, looks awesome. If you wanted to customize, are we best to target the Fluent for classes, or are there ACSS classes we can target for simple styling edits? If you wanted to customize, are we best to target the Fluent form classes? No, you customize everything in the dashboard, James. So literally everything that you would want to customize on a form, for the most part, is in here. So you would, if you're doing your light form, you customize it in here. If you're doing your dark form, you customize it in here. And it's extensive, you know? So if there's, for some reason, something you want to customize that's not found in here, it's probably an oversight. And so you can just let us know, and we'll add it in. I hope that was a dig at P&A Forms, the most disappointing system ever. It actually wasn't. I've never used it, and when I was trying to remember the name of it, Pinocchio popped into my head. So it wasn't. Sometimes, you know, if I call something like I have said Hindenburg many times for Gutenberg. If I say Hindenburg instead of Gutenberg, that is a purposeful dig at Gutenberg. But in this case, I said Pinocchio because it was literally the first word that came to my mind when I was trying to figure out what the name was. Question, the clickable parent doesn't work on the image if I use order -1. The only way I found for it to work is also add z index -1. Is that the right technique, or is there a better way to do it? Index 1, z, yes. Okay. I know why. I don't want to have to, I don't have to rebuild the card. We can just use a frame. All right, so let's go in and let's find a grid of cards real quick. So let's just come up here. Let's search for grid, find a grid of cards, and that we could use like clickable parent on. It would probably be like maybe in Delta here. And of course, I'm zoomed in. Thanks, Derek. Okay. You have to say the name like that too. No, I don't want width there. What is it? 90% here. How do I go back? I never develop at this stupid resolution. Refresh. Okay, get rid of this. You know what, Derek? How about this, Derek? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to my normal resolution. That's what I'm going to do. All right, here we go. Sorry, Derek, you've had how long has this been? 11, 12? It's been 90 minutes. You've had 90 minutes of the right resolution. Now we can go back to a sensible resolution. Grid 3, grid pricing delta. Okay. I just added the grid by itself, so it has no padding in there. Let's just drop that into a section. Bam, bam, bam. Okay. So you wanted to clickable. Oh, this doesn't have an image in it, but I can still do it with this, and we'll see the same effect. So this actually already has the clickable parent technique on it. So let's view on the front end, and let's see if we're good. Now, let's take a look at this, because this does not have the focus technique on it, right? That we talked about earlier. So it's still focusing only on the link. And so let's combine a lot of this stuff. Let's go focus parent. We actually need to be on the parent itself. So the pricing card. So we're going to go focus parent. And here's a good example of why you would want to BIMify this and not use utility classes. Okay. So focus parent shadow. And we're going to save, and we're going to go to the front end. There's your focus parent shadow. So see, it's not focusing on the link, it's focusing on the actual card. But look, it's not going to do it on the next one. Why? Because these are not in a query loop. So there's actually 3 instances of it. I would have to go utility class, utility class, utility class. With BIM, I would not have to be a chump like that, okay? The utility class is fine when this is in a query loop. If it's not in a query loop, you got to BIMify the clickable parent like we showed earlier, okay? That's a perfect example of when to do one versus the other and why you want both options at your disposal. Okay. Now, what you're saying is if I take this paragraph right here, FR price card delta description, and I order this -1 to send it to the top like that, save. and I refresh, that suddenly, no, that's still working. And it should, that would not affect, the only time that this is going to not be, that this is going to interrupt your clickable parent is if you change it to position relative. Position relative will elevate any element above the clickable area. And this is actually useful. So let me explain this because it's actually, you would want to do this sometimes. Notice that this is not a clickable part of the card anymore. Look at the cursor. I can actually select the text. Everything around it is still clickable though. Okay, it doesn't break clickable parent. It only elevated this text above the clickable area. And this is for if you need the text to be selectable, you're not closed off by using the clickable parent technique. You can elevate anything above the clickable area of clickable parent by changing its position to relative. Okay, so that's what happened here. But that did not happen by changing its z-index. So z-index should not, or the order should not affect the layering. That should not affect the layering. Z-index would, however, like if I elevated this to 1, it's probably going to elevate it. Yeah, it elevates it out of the clickable area. It's basically sitting on top of the clickable area now. So Z-index will change it. Position relative will change it. You don't want to do those unless, you know, you're doing it for a very specific reason. But changing the order of something, as we saw, should not change it. I love you, Derek. I love you. Okay. Okay. Is there a plan for adding simple way to add reduce motion button on front end so the user can switch the animations on and off? I've never seen that on any website. It is doable. It's 100% doable. I've never seen that done on any website though. And I don't know, you know, I mean, it actually may be most users who don't like animations have figured out how to turn them off. And so what they do is in their OS, they just say, I prefer reduce motion. And then whatever browser they're in looks at that setting and says, all right, we're not going to show. Well, actually, sorry, back up. Most websites don't respect the user's preferences because they're not accessible, right? If you build the website properly, then you do it in a way that respects the user's preferences. That's why we use rims instead of pixels, for example, okay? So automatic CSS, you're respecting the user's preferences by default. So any website built with automatic CSS that has animations, people prefer reduced motion, they're not gonna see the animations. Most websites, the user just doesn't know about accessibility. They put animations all over the place, and you have people who arrive who prefer reduced motion, and suddenly they're inundated with animations they didn't want to see. And so that's what usually happens. But with automatic CSS, that won't happen. Okay, next question. So point is, they already have a setting for it. I don't know that we need to give them another one. All right, I'm late. This is a great time saver for me as I use Fluent Forms. Questions, comments, anything is welcome now. We're going to close this out shortly, but I want to make sure nobody gets left out here. Being able to pull over form styling in Sass for when we have to style a form that comes from another plugin, example, WooCommerce. That is doable. That is doable. I will add that to the list. We'll take a look at doing that. Let's see. Missed the beginning. Can you restart? Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Mark's trying to kill me over here. Let's see. What about LI and UL when using them in an accordion? What about them, BG? This is an intriguing first part of your question, but I need the rest of the question. What about them? What about LI and UL when using them in an accordion? Maybe you were talking about the smart spacing option. That could be what you were referring to. That would not affect accordions because an accordion, well, let's just take a look. You actually probably wouldn't want that to affect an accordion. I mean, the accordions don't live in that kind of area, right? Let's do a grid 2. And usually an accordion is going to be used like this. So you have this situation where you're going to add, let me go, why don't we use a frames accordion while we're at it? So let's just go into automatic CSS. Let's go into frames and let's turn this on. Frames. Okay, so we got, which one do we want to turn on? slider, slider, accordion, save. Okay. Let's close this out. We don't want to get too tabby around here. All right, let's close out tabs we don't need. Save, refresh the builder. Now I should have my frames accordion available to me. All right, so there's my frames accordion. And man, look at those icon wrappers. Absolutely out of control. Frames, body styling, head styling settings. Okay, icon size. My gosh, chill out. Text S. M, wrapper. The wrapper is what I wanted, 0. Okay. See how there's no spacing between our accordions? This is what you get. Actually, okay, here's oh, I need a third one so that we can have 2 close at the same time. Let's get rid of that. Let's add an accordion item. All right, save, refresh. Let's check this out. Okay, so box shadow still does, outline and box shadow still kind of have the same similar focus problem when there's elements touching. It's the bottom of this second element is on top of the focus of the element before it. There's really no way I know of to solve that. It's less egregious on box shadow because the box shadow feels like it's attached to the element, whereas the outline has an offset. And the offset plus the bottom being hidden, you see like it looks more broken than it does with box shadow. But typically you don't want your accordions to do this anyway, because that's ugly. So what you would do is you would come in here and you would choose to have a gap, right? So I can do content gap, and then immediately I have my gap between elements. And so I don't need smart spacing, like, because I have gap control, very easy. It's like, 1 second and I can space them out however I want to. The reason smart spacing exists is because in a rich text element, like I'm going to put a rich text element right here, and then I'm going to go put a bunch of things in here, right? So if I put a heading as an example, there's a heading 1, I'm a heading, and then there's a bunch of paragraphs. And then even you come in and you're like, I want to throw a list in here. So list item 1, list item 2. Okay. There are no controls for how to style these things. The rich text element, like I showed earlier, you go to the style tab. Where's your styling for headings in here? Where's your styling for the paragraphs? Where's your styling for the list? There is none. There are no controls. Right now, this looks okay because smart spacing is on. If I turn smart spacing off, this would be a disaster going on right here. So smart spacing is able to reach into these things that you don't have control over and control them for you. Whereas an accordion, I have control over that. So I don't need smart spacing there. I can just use my gaps as I normally would. And on these content wrappers, I can actually control this from the main frames panel. So body styling, do like little space im action. So I can control all of them. Even though I'm styling at the ID level here, I'm actually able to control all of them from the main element. I don't have to like click every child element and style it. I already showed that in the other, go watch the video on accordions. It's very easy to use. Okay, other questions? Netrunner says, now I kind of regret not going for the LTD deal. I'm going to do a video. There's literally, let me pull up. I'm going to do it on my other screen. I started making a list, because you don't know from the outside. There's no way to tell from the outside. Let me go to automatic CSS here. I know you guys can't see what I'm doing. I just wanted to check my notes for this video that I was going to do. Dash ACSS mistakes. There we go. There it is, right there. 19. So the concept of the video is X ACSS features that don't exist in any other framework. I'm up to 19. There's at least 19, okay? There could be a few more now that this update has come out. But I'm going to do a whole video. It's going to be a walkthrough of features that don't exist in any other framework. That once you've started using them and you've seen the quality of life improvement, it's just like the minute I had to go in, there's a site. I'm actually convincing the client right now. I did the site years ago, and I go in, no automatic CSS, and it's an Oxygen. It's like, two strikes. Okay. The fact that it's not, I can deal with the being an Oxygen, okay? I spent many hours in Oxygen. I can deal with it. Oxygen's still fine, whatever. It's not my preferred builder, but it's fine. But not having automatic CSS, every second of editing the page, I'm like, I want to jump off a bridge face first. Like, this is just tedious. And like, where are my helpers? Where is my everything? You are going to realize, like, it is just, you don't really realize until you go back to the way you used to do things. And then you're just like, this is just, how did I live this way? Right? Speaking of orphans, like slums, it's just like, oh, how did I? I'm just, it's a joke. It's a joke. Okay. All right. Question. Did you cover container query support? I did in a separate video. Let's go in here and let's just do it real quick. So I want to do it with a grid because the grid actually has an extra step that people may not realize. So let's do a little quick grid. So we're going to go in here, grid, and let's go 3 and M and S. Okay. Save, and I'll do a block. Now I got to get my head into container query mode for a second because this is not, this is like, you know, bleeding edge stuff. I don't actually use container queries in real life because they're not, for me, they're not supported enough yet. I like to see over 90% before I use them in the real world. So, you know, we've played around with them and things like that. So what I need to do is I need to mark this container as a container. We can actually look at the DOM real quick. And let's just throw, I know this is going to be ugly, but let's just throw a color on here. Let's just do base light. And while we're there, we'll just do a little padding because why not? All right, let's go here. Now I can actually see that. Inspect. Bring this up here. All right, so this div right here is my container. Just look at this badge. It's notating that there's a grid, and you can actually get grid inspection controls if you click that. It's really cool. But just keep an eye on that badge because something else is about to happen. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write the word contain. Okay, and I'm going to hit save, and then we're just going to refresh. Okay, and look at this. Now there's 2 badges. One says grid and another says container, and that's a verification that this is now understood to be a container for container queries. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to add, actually we did add a block. So we're going to add padding to this block, and we'll just do BG action. Okay, just something that we can see. We need to see something on the page. Okay, so we're going to inspect this. Look at this. I did not put a contain class on this block right here. I put a contain class on its parent, but the way that we've built it, especially for grids, we know, hey, you're going to need your children to be containers too. Okay, so we do that for you automatically. So this is a container and this is a container. And once something is a container, that means that it's being watched. Okay, so by the processor, it's watching the size of that container now. And then we can do things with it. All right. So we can change its color, for example. So this has BG action. So I'm going to go down to style. I'm doing this at the ID level just for demonstration purposes. And now we can write at container, and we can do like a max width. You just write this like a media query. So you check what your breakpoints are here. 991. All right. And then we're just going to say, all right, at 991 and below, the background is going to change to red. Now, would you ever want to do this? Like, no, probably not. This is for demonstration purposes. I've already done a video that shows a practical example of doing this. Okay. Now, actually, I can't do 991. We need to do something smaller. Something obvious. That's not going to be obvious. So let's do 500 pixels, 300, 200, add container, background's color, red. Should be taking effect. Let's see. All right. What have we done wrong? What have we done wrong here? Let's make this a grid. Let me make it even more obvious. Let's make this a grid 2. If I'm missing anything obvious, because I am, you know, anytime you're live, you're just like, you're going to miss obvious shit. Block, container. Yeah, it is container. Max width 300 pixels. Just trying to make sure I formatted it properly. We can go. This is what you do when you're, oh no, the container store. That's what we need. All right, at container. Let's go down. Post. At container, min width 400 pixels. Now I'm pretty sure that I've done that correctly. Oh, that's right. That's why I'm showing you this in the first place. wrap it with a block. See, even made the mistake myself. Okay, so now this block and that block should talk to, you need a block that serves as the actual container that's not the thing that you're trying to change. And that's still not behaving though. That is a container. Let's go down. If anybody sees anything obvious, this should be working. It's literally not responding to anything. Doesn't care about important. Anybody? Anybody? I'll look at the chat in just a second. Okay, let me look at the chat. Where is... I'm looking at the chat. Come on, chat. Where's your people in playing with container queries? No. Oh, did I not? The most obvious thing. The most obvious thing. It does help to reference. It does help to reference, yes. Okay. Forgot the word root. All right, so you see here what's happening. Refresh. Okay, now I'm going to take this out of here. See how it's blue? See how it's red? So when it goes into a different container context, it's able to change its style. This is distinctly different from a media query. And this is where, like, I still actually hear the objection. They're like, it's not that important. I can do that with media queries. You can't do this with media queries. This is impossible. And so the example that I showed was a wide card that when you stick it in a grid, it becomes a tall card without a media query. You can't do that. And my estimation is that container queries will, in 80% of cases, replace media queries. That's my prediction. Media queries, I still think have their place for for certain things. But container queries are far more powerful because they look at the context that the thing is in. They don't rely on the device that's looking at the thing, which is very, 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 very important. And it's a critical distinction. So yeah, that's your, you have to write all custom CSS. There's no way to do this really with utilities. I mean, there may be some cases that we come across where it's like some utilities would be really, really helpful here. But for the most part, you're complete. And I'm doing a very basic example, like of just changing the background color. Typically what you're doing is changing the whole structure of something, changing a lot of things at once. And the idea of doing that with like some sort of utilities is not, you would just write CSS. You'll get it done way faster. And as you see, it's not hard, right? If you remember to write the stupid word root, which is a bricks thing. If I was in CodeBox, this would have worked just fine. But yeah, it's just at container and then put in what the container size is that you want to change the styles at and start changing the styles. The only utility is the contain utility class that turns the parents into containers. That's really all you need. And then the only difference, notice that when I take it out of its parent that's inside of this grid, it doesn't respect the container query. That's because in a grid, it needs a wrapper effectively to look at the size of. Right here, its parent is the entire container. And the size of the entire container is not the size of the cell that I'm putting it in. So I need something to represent the cell. And then when I put it in the cell, it can look at the actual cell and say, oh, you're not that wide. And then it changes its styles. So when you're building grids, you need your things to be in wrappers. Okay. Last question. We'll do one more. Let's go back. I got to scroll back up. Question, future request. Any chance to see a blueprint video again? A lot of changes since the last blueprint video. I know it's a real pain in the keister. Yeah, those blueprint videos, it's a lot. It's a lot. I feel like it should be on like a once. Look, by the time I redo it, 3 months later, someone's going to be like, can you redo it? There's so many new things. I mean, there's so many new things, right? All the time. So I think it's like a once a year thing. Like once a year, I'll do here's my annual blueprint update video and do a whole, because it's a whole freaking project. I want to follow up on this real quick before we go. When you do cards and put them in ULLIs, do you set tab index? Do I get them to the tab order on the page? Example, Geary Web font P cards is skipped. What if you want them in tab? Example on Geary.co. I don't know what cards you're referring to. Focus. See, these cards are not, you definitely focus on those. So you're not talking about those. It's focusing on this button right here, focusing on that button right there, focusing on this button right here, focusing on this button right here. Here you may, so this, I used clickable parent on, but I also wanted these to be focusable links. So they're all focusable. That one's focusable. That one's focusable. They're all focusable. So there's no problem there. These YouTube things are like, it's going to focus on every icon inside of that YouTube embed. Then it's going to focus here. It's going to focus there. Then it's focusing down here. So I don't see any cards that are not tab index. If something's a link, you shouldn't need to mess with tab index because it's automatically going to pick up keyboard focus. So you would have to clarify that question. Okay. Yeah, I could do amendments to the blueprint video, but then it's like, now you got to watch the amendments, and which amendments version are you watching? I think it's better to just put it all in one video for this year. Like, here's my 2023 blueprint. Here's my 2024 blueprint. Here's my, I think that's just kind of keep it nice and tidy. Actually was those in the top. I tried Firefox. This up here. Well, now I have the new features for 2.6. I'm going to make this entire card focusable, but it still has tab index by default. You can also, guys, change the focus color on the fly of various buttons that's what the focus utility classes are for. Like focus -- white, focus -- action, focus well, action's the default. Focus -- black, focus -- primary, focus. You can change the focus color of any element on the fly. So you see that when you have like an action button, and this is especially actually important when you're using the box shadow style. This will be the last thing we look at, I guess. I keep saying that, but I do have work to do actually. Let's add a container and let's add a button. So I am using box shadow focus style. So when I go button action, also something to note when you are testing this, you need to actually make this a link. So if I go in and go link type, if I don't put a link type or like a URL, it's not going to focus on it because it's not actually going to be a link. Okay, you see the problem? So I'm focused here. This is box shadow focus styling. Here, this would be a good time to show how the box shadow actually follows the contours of an element too. But you cannot really see that is being focused on because the box shadow color is the same color as this. So what we're going to do, see that? So on the fly, I was able to be like, no, change that focus to black. Now you could do that by default, by the way, okay? On all your buttons, you can target all of your buttons and you can change their focus color by default. That's a possibility too. But the utility class gives me the ability to do this on the fly. But now let's take a look at if I did border radius here. And for those of you who are like, how do I change my button border radius? Well, you just do it back here. And I know this is a magic area, okay? I get it. Yes, you could call me out and be like, Kevin, this is a magic area. Yes, you're absolutely right. And this magic area is going to disappear. Button border styling, button border radius. Let's just do something 50 VW maybe. And let's go look at this on the front end. So that's what happens to my button. I have a pill now. That's called a pill shape. And look at that focus style, guys. That's so nice. Look at it. It's just like, ooh, it's got the curves now. That's fantastic. Now let's see what would happen if I was using outline maybe. So I'll just change that to outline as my default focus style. And this used to be the default in automatic CSS. Actually it's doing it here. I think it's browser based. So some browsers, you're going to get a square around it. Chrome is always on like the cutting edge, right? But a lot of browsers, you'll get a square outline around that element. And it's really ugly. It's really ugly to have a square box around a pill button. The box shadow will ensure that it conforms. But go try it in Firefox, Safari, some of those other, a lot of them, and maybe not a newer version, an older version. They're catching up. Because, I mean, this is a commonly known thing that it's not good to have a box around a round item, right? Okay, you have work to do. You mean you don't dedicate your entire life to supporting ACSS and frames? I don't, just a large portion. Is there a planned 2.8 or 2.9? In short, when do you think ACSS 3.0 is roughly slated to release? Okay, we've had internal conversations about this. I try to be as transparent as possible when answering these questions. What I will say for transparency is there will definitely be a 2.7. I don't know if there will be a 2.8 and a 2.9. Because we have to have a gap where we're not adding new things to the existing, infrastructure that also then have to be considered for the new info. Like, it's just better if we can just put a freeze, like put a freeze on all new features and let's build a new infrastructure and then launch the new infrastructure and we're good to go. So transparency, there may not be a 2.8, 2.9. There will be a 2.7. It's already planned. It's already halfway done. 2.7 is already halfway done. 2.8, 2.9, we may go from 2.7 to 3.0. What I can't be transparent on is the date. I have a date that I am aiming at, okay? It's in the crosshairs. I have a backup date. I have a secondary date. Unfortunately, I can't tell you either of them. But the one that I am aiming at, the first one, is a lofty goal. It's aggressive. Let's say it's an aggressive timeline. I don't want you guys to have to wait a long time. I personally don't want to wait a long time. Remember, I'm a user of automatic CSS. I would like to have 3.0 now if I could have it now. I don't want to wait a long time myself, and I don't want you guys to wait a long time. So we have an aggressive timeline for 3.0. Whether we can hit that aggressive timeline or not remains to be seen. There's a lot of unproven ideas and things that we have to, there's a lot of challenges involved in this stuff. So I can't give any times. All right. How long did we go? 2 hours? I'm comfortable with that. Next Tuesday, ACSS Q&A for beginners. The Tuesday after that, ACSS Q&A for intermediate advanced users. Okay, we're splitting them up now. So if you are more of a beginner, and you're still here, thank you, by the way. If you are a beginner, you consider yourself to be newer to ACSS, newer to the whole workflow, maybe newer to web development in general, or design, whatever you guys want to call it, next Tuesday is for you. Next Tuesday Q&A is all beginner level questions and explanations and workflow discussion and all of that. If you consider yourself to be more intermediate advanced, the Tuesday after that will be all for you. Okay? I'm out, guys. I love you. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you got a lot out of this. I will see you again very soon. Peace.